Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's meeting. This is an opportunity for the board and administration to receive your comments and feedback on the recommendations on high schools. For those who have signed up to offer comments this evening, I will remind speakers that you are allowed 3 minutes to offer comments to the board. A timer will start when you begin, and I ask that you briefly conclude your remarks when you hear the timer go off. Comments should be directed to the board collectively, should be respectful, and should not address a topic that might be of a confidential nature. I will also remind our speakers that while the board is happy to receive your comments, we will not respond or answer any questions this evening. Questions and inquiries can be directed to the IPS Service Center, the Superintendent's Office, or the board office by phone or email. Before we get started, I want to note that the board will not be taking formal action on the administration's recommendations until our September 18th meeting. Furthermore, any approved changes would not go into effect until the 2018-19 school year. Finally, all current programs will continue to serve students regardless of any decisions on facilities. Mr. Grommelsbacher, would you please call our first speaker to the microphone?
Yes, ma'am. I will call two names at once. The first one will speak first, and if the second could head to our second microphone. We have a long list of speakers this evening, and we want to ensure that everyone has their full 3 minutes to offer comments. Our first speaker signed up this evening, if present, is Jonathan Young, followed by Joseph Jackson. We can revisit those names. After that, we would have Dawn Perez, please. Patricia Starks. Dontanya Batts. Ms. Batts would be followed by Anya Tucker.
Reinvent IPS is not right for our students for several reasons. There are too many holes in the program. For example, special ed students are going to be left out. We don't even have enough special ed students as it is right now. And the current program of the 45 different career pathways, 32 currently exist over at Arsenal Technical High School, Crispus Attucks, and the IB program. Therefore, all of those programs are already open to the entire district. So this is not something that's new, and I understand that there is a rush to get plans implemented because they've already been on your radar since about 2014, 2015, when career pathways were first mentioned in the board documents. I am extremely concerned because we put our students in a situation where we're forcing them, we want them to succeed. That should be the goal of education, is to make them well-rounded adults who contribute to society. And then we have programs at Northwest in Arlington that are working, but we refuse to replicate those programs because if we were in suburban high schools or a suburban district, smaller schools, smaller capacity programs means that students are excelling. We want smaller classrooms because they thrive in smaller environments. So now we're going to consolidate the schools into 4 schools with not enough teachers, increasing the classroom sizes, reducing the one-on-one impact that's happening at these schools that were failing, such as Arlington went from a 39% graduation rate to a 78% graduation rate to an 82% graduation rate last year. Why are we constantly busing our brown, our black, and our poor students? We bus to desegregate, and now we're busing to save a couple of dollars. That's 2% of your overall budget. It just doesn't make sense. Not to mention, as the district consolidates, your expenditures are increasing. Things just don't add up, and it's not fair to our students. I've talked to parents, I've talked to educators, I've talked to students, and they all have concerns. The rumors that we hear about IPS are just that, because there's some pretty amazing things that are happening, even at John Marshall Middle School. Just to know that that environment has totally transformed doesn't make sense to me that you would want to shut things down as they're improving. We're replicating programs for families who are affluent, but we're taking away programs for families who are struggling and trying, families who need mentors, families and students who are getting the supports that they need by reaching out to the communities because they're left with no resources to start at -0 and starting at negative and going to the future. It just doesn't make sense. Just delay the vote, reconsider other options. Thank you.
If present, Anya or Anye Tucker, please, followed by Joseph Jackson.
Hi, I'm a Northwest student athlete, and when I heard about the school possibly getting shut down or being a middle school, I was kind of hurt because I've been in here since 7th grade, and to have it like turn to a middle school or close down, to have high school completely out the situation is kind of hurtful because usually we have alumni night at football games or just alumni come in. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so, yeah, it was just like if the school gets closed down or turned into a middle school, then even though I'm graduating this year, it's like, what about everybody else? And especially like kids like me that's been here since 7th grade, it's like they'll have to go to a new school. And I think this school should stay open as a high school because if you have all high schools in the center of Indianapolis, downtown, then it would be crowded. And plus, the students who walk to school wouldn't be able to have transportation because you never know, like, their parents might not have transportation. That's all I have to say.
Joseph Jackson is next to speak, be followed by Yasli Velasquez.
My name is Joseph Jackson. Piggybacking off of what Ms. Tucker was talking about, I believe that Northwest can hold and withstand being a high school rather than being a middle school. We have more of the room and have the capabilities to withhold high school rather than being a middle school, coming with areas of parking and other areas to hold events. Also, the community, we have multiple neighborhoods and apartment complexes around, and students walk to and from every day. And honestly, Northwest, it looks good on the outside and in the inside. And I think that this school would be best suited for high school rather than middle school. That's all I have to say.
After Ms. Velasquez would be Jim Sherrek, if present. Virginia Cottrell. After Ms. Cottrell would be Andrea Newton.
To close Northwest would be a huge disservice to our community and to our children. The administration and teachers have worked hard to gain the trust of students and help kids graduate and achieve their dreams. Sorry, I don't speak well in front of the crowds. In 2017, over 80% of the seniors at Northwest graduated. Every senior in the graduating class was accepted to college, and over $2.5 million in scholarships were received by students. This doesn't happen without caring, loving, hardworking, and dedicated teachers. Why punish the teachers and administrators for doing their jobs well? It's not fair to make children get on buses and go to school away from their teachers who care and are invested in their futures, sometimes more than their parents are. I get phone calls when my son's having a bad day or when he's not doing his assignments. I think if you put him in a classroom that's full to capacity, kids are going to slip through the cracks, and I won't receive those phone calls. Closing Northwest will mean that many students won't be able to participate in extracurricular activities. There's just not going to be transportation. Even if there's buses, a lot of their parents don't have cars. Kids walk to school, they walk home after football games, they walk home after practices. Their parents don't have cars. Their parents won't be able to come watch them play in their games because they won't be able to get there. Late buses often don't get kids home until after 8 or 8:30 p.m. Parents won't be involved because it's just too far away. IPS will lose students when there are no schools in the community. A lot of people just said, you know what, we'll move. We'll go somewhere else. We won't be here anymore. It makes no sense to force kids to choose a career path when they're 14. Who knows what they really want to do in 8th grade, and to have to choose that for your high school is crazy. Closing Northwest will have no impact on any of you sitting up there, but closing Northwest will have a huge negative impact on the lives of the students who attend Northwest. Our children matter, and parents should have a voice for the choices that impact their children.
If present, the next to speak is Andrea Newton, followed by Richard Curry, please.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Newton. I am here on behalf of my son, James Curry, who is a sophomore at Northwest High School. I'm also a graduate of Northwest High School, class of 2001. My brother is also a graduate of Northwest High School, class of 2005. I'm here because we love Northwest. I'm here because I'm a single mother, and Northwest is an intricate part to the village that it takes to raise my child. I'm here because of the work that Michelle Watts does and all of the staff that come alongside of her. And I'm simply here to ask you all to reconsider whatever decisions you all have made for Northwest High School. We have lived in this community for over 20 years, and Northwest has always been a safe place, not only for myself, but for my son as well. The work that Michelle Watts is doing, the work that her staff is doing, the administration and the staff that they have here are supporting these students. And my son, I can't speak for anybody else's student, but my son is more successful now in his high school career than he has been. This is only his second year of high school, and it is my hope that he will be able to walk across this stage for the graduating class of 2020. Northwest is needed on this side of town. We do not want to bus our children to the other side of town. We don't want to have to figure out transportation, and we also want to keep our children in places where the staff and administration know, and not only know, but they love our students. I talk to my son's teachers, I talk to his counselors, I'm able to get in touch with Ms. Watts, and whatever my son needs throughout the day, I can go to work and I don't have to worry about his safety. I don't have to worry about whether or not he's being disciplined correctly or, being dealt with in love. So I simply came today on behalf of alumni and on behalf of my son. He doesn't want to go anywhere else next year. I don't want to send him anywhere else next year. So I'm asking that for as long as we have Michelle Watts in this building, we know that she's a capable leader. We know that she loves our children. We know that she supports the vision of IPS. So we're asking that you all would maybe refocus and just come up with some other ideas, but we definitely don't want to see Northwest High School close because it has been beneficial to not only my family, but many families in this community. Thank you.
The next speak, if present, would be Richard Curry, followed by Christina Smith.
Good evening to the IPS Board of Commissioners, to the Superintendent, and all who's in attendance. My name is Richard L. Curry, Jr. I'm the senior pastor of the True Tribe Missionary Baptist Church, a congregation in an area that serves the families and students that attend this very school. I'm also a 20-year resident of this community. In addition, I've been employed for close to 26 years with the Indiana Department of Correction. I am the former superintendent of the Marion Superior Juvenile Detention Center and a proud graduate of Broad Ripple High School. Because of my close ties with the community through the different lenses of life, it's hard not to be sentimental in my thoughts as we consider closing multiple high schools in the IPS district, specifically the proposed mission change of the Northwest High School. However, both of my children graduated from this school, and my grandson currently attends here. So instead of being sentimental, I'd like to take a sensible approach, if you would, to explain to us why we should not close or alter the mission of this school. I'm going to provide us with two practical reasons real quick of why we should leave it the way it is. Reason number one, we've been down this road before with little return on investment to the community. I think it would be safe to say that the current plight of IPS has its ties and foundations in the mass movement of inner city children to township schools beginning around 1983. Many of us in the room can remember the impact of what we called the Soul Train. It was the nickname of the buses that transported our kids and our funding to Perry Meridian, Decatur Central, and other township schools that begin to suck the life out of IPS, especially in the area of sports. While education is of utter importance, sports plays a major role in the educational process and is a viable way for inner city children to escape a life of poverty. What busing accomplished was taking student athletes from city schools, thus putting township schools on the map. Ben Davis would not have as much success if it was not for the closing of Washington. I can safely say that Warren Central and Lawrence North have benefited from the mission changes of Arlington and John Marshall as well. Why is this important, you may ask? Because it created a divide and conquer system that does not allow our inner city kids to win. Without winning, there are fewer sponsors for equipment and instruction, fewer fans, and most importantly, less hope. If Northwest were playing Ben Davis today, you would see exactly what I'm talking about. Their bleachers would be full and ours would be empty. A school that doesn't, to further my point, let's use Addicks High School as an example. A school that didn't have lights on the football field for a long time. A former middle school that now has worked its way to state championships in basketball.
Thank you, sir.
In closing, let me close.
Conclude.
Thank you, but let me close. All I'm saying is that we're taking away the athletes. Not only that, we're stripping the west side, the malls, the car lots, and everything, and now you're going to take the school. What does that mean to a parent that lives across the street, that moved here so that they can be involved in the life of their children's life in high school? What does that mean to a single parent that has
Thank you, sir.
no
We have
cars?
several more folks that need to speak this evening.
I
Thank
understand.
you so much.
I
We
understand.
appreciate your remarks.
Well, thank you.
We need the next speaker,
Can I give
please,
you my
sir.
copies?
Absolutely. We'd be happy to receive those. The next speaker, if present, is Christina Smith. Christina Smith would be followed by Brandon Washington. Brandon Washington, please. After Brandon Washington would be Nathan Harris, please. We did previously, yes. Madam President, I'll defer to you on whether or not to receive those remarks now or later.
We'll, just like we did yesterday, when people aren't here, when we call, we'll wait till the end after go through the list, and then anyone who was missed will take in the same order.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. After Nathan Harris would be Carrie Harris, please. Carrie Harris will be followed by Victor Dombili.
Good evening, board, Dr. Fairby, and administration. Yeah, here I am again for the last time. I'm hoping something I've said has touched a string somewhere in someone's heart. Remember, the former superintendent, Glenda Ritz, said, "A school board doesn't have to get rid of things. The board members should be working on how to get what the children in the district need. Get resources for the children so that education happens." There are lots of reasons. There are lots of resources that have not been tapped into. The task to find resources requires work. It's much easier to just go along to get along. It's easy to just allow others to bring recommendations and to just sign off on them. I'm asking you for the last time to not close any of Indianapolis public high schools. There is really no work that has been done to find other ways to find resources and dollars in these last 4 years to keep these schools open and to work so that others might want to come to IPS. I have done some research and I have my packet for the folks, and took it on myself to find ways that the community could help you. And I really want to help you because you're going to disrupt too many lives. You're going to disrupt too many lives. And I understand that IPS has to find a way. One way is sell the building downtown. Sell it. You'll get so much money for that building that's downtown, much more than you'll get for these high schools. And then let's go to work to put students back in these buildings. Thank you.
Victor Dumbili, Latashiana Garrett, the next to speak would be Veda Stein.
It's not gonna come down, is it? Is that okay? Can you hear me? Hi, I'm a junior at Northwest Community High School, and I've been here since my sophomore year. And to think that it's going to be turned into a middle school or shut down, because to me, this is more than a school. This is memories. This is staying up late, studying, group chats with friends. This is sports, because I'm also an athlete. So I just don't think it's right. And then you're transferring hundreds of kids all to one school downtown. So this is more than just, like, what's the real reason? Because I don't get it, and you may say that. I'm sorry. I mean, yeah, I'm just a kid, I'm just a teenager, but this is a lot to me because this is my last year. I'm gonna walk this stage. Then these kids, this is their junior year, and they're looking forward to walking, and they won't have that opportunity just because. And then I just don't think it's fair. They're gonna be sent to a school where they're not welcome. You're changing boundaries, territories. And it's just a lot. I mean, it could easily be prevented. I just don't think you should do it. And yeah, let's keep Northwest. So yeah, that's it.
After Ms. Stein would be Charity Scott, if present.
Hello, board. I am Dr. Durstein, and I am a proud alumnus of Indiana Public Schools. I submit that you assembled an incorrect task force and asked the wrong questions. The questions that should have been asked are the ones that are the most pressing is why has IPS been unable to attract students and provide them with a quality education? There are sufficient numbers of high school age children that we are opening charter schools left and right and cannibalizing our public schools that have been, some of them have been here for more than 100 years. This is a beautiful building, and there is no reason to get rid of these wonderful public institutions. Absolutely no reason at all. If the problem is low enrollment, why are children drowning on waiting lists? And when people go in to enroll their children, they are turned away from the high schools. So I don't understand, if you're having an enrollment problem, how are you not enrolling students that come to you? And then what is the plan to improve the educational standards? When I go on your website, your high schools are having D's and F's. These problems don't start in high school, they start in early childhood education. I see no plans for universal pre-K. What are we saving our money for? We're not saving money, we're cutting jobs. We're cutting jobs of people who come and work here. We're cutting the life out of the communities that these schools represent. These schools, our neighborhood schools, create and maintain our communities. They are the heart and soul of our communities. As so many of even the young people who have come up here and spoke to can attest to, and how much losing a school out of a neighborhood such as this will mean to that community. It keeps generations connected and helps us to be responsible for our next generation to come. The problem with the task force that I have, the external members were more than 50% composed of real estate developers or consultants. If you ask someone in real estate what to do with prime property located in some of the fastest growing and most desirable communities in our city, what to do with it, the answer would be to sell it. Because Broad Ripple High School is not on the closed list, it is on the sell list. And when you look at your own report numbers on Broad Ripple High School, it gets B's and C's. It has the graduation rates in the 80s, high 80s, and projected to be in the 90%. And by next year, it is in a desirable community. Why would you close a school such as that, or as this, and then build a charter school on a river?
Please conclude. Thank you.
I thank you very much for your time, and I respectfully request that we do not close any of these schools and we delay the vote. Thank you very much.
Charity Scott. Charity Scott is next to speak if present, followed by David Nahas. After David is Talia Parham, please.
My name is David Nahas, class of 67, Northwest High School, the first four-year graduating class of Northwest. Well, let's change the school calendar. You can start the last 2 weeks of August or the day after Labor Day. Get your 180 days in. Have 16 weeks of summer school like I did back in the 60s. 4th of July comes on a weekend. You take Monday off. The people will come back in the IPS. They'll have more people, bigger enrollment. You get more money from the government. Dr. White's plan isn't working too good. He's out of the picture. And a lot of people left the IPS district because they don't want their kids going to school year-round. They want to be with their kids during the summer. The state fairs in town, a lot of other activities. And that's one way of bringing everybody back in the IPS community, and then you won't have to consolidate schools because the enrollment's too low. And that's my final answer. Thank you for your attention.
Talia Parham next to speak if present, followed by Andrea De Ramos. Andrea De Ramos. Michelle Strader. Adrian Washington. Lola Winden. Lola would be followed by Isaac Smith if present.
Good evening. I'm coming from a parent's point of view. I graduated here in 1991. My husband also graduated from here. I have 3 kids. Well, I had one. He just graduated last year. Northwest is not only a school and a community, this is a family. These teachers actually care about these kids 100%. I'm known by name. There go the Wyndon's mom. I'm an involved parent from 107 to 109 to Northwest. I've been here every step of the way. And to close the school is just like taking a piece of a heart away. You're gonna move all these kids into these 4 high schools. It's gonna be overran, jam-packed, no teachers, and then that's when they're gonna leave and go to the charter schools because it's gonna be too overcrowded. I'm just saying that I love this school, I love the community, I love the teachers. Right now, I'm trying to wreck my brain because I have to move from my residence. I'm trying to wreck my brain of where I'm gonna live to stay in this district so my kids can continue. I have 2 seniors can continue their senior year here for this last year that they're gonna be seniors. I don't wanna move to Pike, to Ben Davis, to Lawrence. No, I don't want them to move. I want them to stay right here and walk where they've been with IPS since day 1. My son got a basketball scholarship. An IPS student got a basketball scholarship that has a football body. Nobody believed in him. Northwest did. Right now, he is up in South Dakota on a basketball and academic scholarship. He got basketball and academic. And it wasn't just me. It was the village of these teachers because we can't do it by ourselves. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Isaac Smith, please. Jayan Hoover. Vera Hayes would be next.
It's Zion. I've been a student here since I was in 8th grade. What you hear on the outside doesn't reflect what's going on inside. And I had to learn that when I was scared to come here. The previous year, the fight happened, it was all over the news and stuff like that. But once I got here, I realized that I wanted to stay here. I want to graduate here. This is blood. When you walk in here, you feel the love of those teachers. You see the love of these teachers. And yes, as a high school student, you're going to be like, dang, I don't want to go to that class. Dang, I don't want to see this teacher. But we're students. Don't take everything that's on the news. Don't take that as insight, because you can ask us. When you walk around, you can ask us. And this place has history. My grandmother graduated from here. My mother graduated from here, and I want to be the next graduate. But I can't do that if I leave here. I don't want to leave here. And my little sister goes here too. She might not want to be here, but this is family right here. All of my memories have been made here. For real, but all of my memories have been made here. This is my high school. This is our high school. We bleed green. Thank you.
Vera Hayes, please. Vera Hayes. Adam Sears. Leslie Jackson. Jay Hilliard.
How y'all doing? I'm a little nervous. This is my first time doing a public speak. Y'all closing down Northwest, man. I am so upset, sad, frustrated of y'all trying to move my home. I've been here for 3 years, and hands down, this is the most caring high school I've ever been to. I don't think y'all understand how much this school is improving. Year after year, we're becoming better, stronger. And closing down this school, you're not gonna be able to be there to see the full potential. Y'all might just see this as just a normal IPS school, but family is the word for this school, man. Thank you. My name is Javante Hilliard. Appreciate your time.
Leslie Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Please.
Call me.
Yeah.
Okay. I am a parent. I've had a student athlete attend here. He graduated with honors. He was 11th in his class. I have another student athlete who's also a member
could
of the
you
honors.
speak to the microphone?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? I have 2 boys here. Well, one graduated, one's left. I don't have any more coming here. But the important thing about that is this school is very important to the community. This school is such that the facility itself is one for a high school. When you have other people, other schools competing, it matters where you compete. I was a student athlete, so when you would travel and look at other schools, it mattered. To me, this is the better high school for the West Side. I understand that change is needed. I'm not against it, but we have to be smart. This is about our future. These people that we are working to help fight for and want to educate, these are going to be decision makers. So when we are rolling around our little rascals 20, 40 years later, you're going to have these guys making decisions, and we have to get them educated. So moving them around and disrupting all that is harmful. So I just want you to rethink, reconsider, because initially you said you were going to stay and that this was going to be the high school. What happened? Thank you.
Sandie Ryberg, please. Followed by Melvin Bryant.
I'm Sandie Ryberg. Good evening. I'm an IPS alum, former IPS teacher and administrator, mother of 2 IPS alumni, mother-in-law of an IPS teacher, and grandmother of 2 current IPS students. As you can see by my clothing tonight, I still proudly wear my blue and white colors representing Shortridge High School, and my former classmates and I still call ourselves Blue Devils. The identification we all feel with mascots, colors, and sports teams may be silly, but it is very human. I wager that each of you board members can still name the mascot of your high school, and you too, Dr. Fairby. These symbols, however, are only important because they are part of creating a feeling of being members of a community. Communities are more than the buildings in which they are housed, but the buildings are important reflections of communities and even the ancestors of those communities, as in the Jean Poston, Dr. Jacqueline Greenwood, and tonight's location, the Julian D. Coleman auditoriums. It is true, however, that the buildings may be the least important aspect of a community, in my opinion, and thus, when a school board is faced with being fiscally responsible, its highest duty, buildings sometimes must go. But if in fact we are putting children and their needs at the center of our responsibilities, and if in fact we are showing respect for the teachers and staff who are on the line every day meeting the needs of those children, and if in fact we respect the parents who raised those children and the voters who placed responsibility in our hands, we need to at least consider a plan that might take their needs into consideration. The proposed plan for eliminating neighborhood high schools in favor of career centers may be a good one. Research does indicate that whether students eventually choose to engage in the career interests they select at the tender age of 13, 14, or 15, focusing on an interest during the high school years does result in higher academic achievement, lower dropout rates, and greater citizenship. But sports teams are also important, as are mentoring programs, proximity to one's community members and family, and other elements that will be diminished somewhat by this plan. Abraham Lincoln famously said, "You can please some of the people all of the time, you can please all of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time." I believe that I have a plan involving phasing out the current high school configurations rather than suddenly ending them that can please more of the people than the current plan. I will be happy to present this plan via email and at the next board meeting, and I ask the board and Dr. Farabee to please give it your consideration, and I do have copies with me tonight. I have heard this board respond respectfully to the needs of the various communities they serve, and I believe you can and will do so again. Thank you.
Melvin Bryant, please.
Good afternoon, board. Thank you for your time. First and foremost, I am extremely concerned because I'm looking at this board and you guys are looking like, man, this is just one more meeting. But to us, you know, I have 2 children at Broad Ripple High School. I have a junior and I have a freshman. When I have my daughter coming home every day crying, asking me, what am I going to do, what am I going to do? I got these people deciding what school I should go to, when if I wanted to go to those schools, I would have chose that school from the very beginning. I think the real problem is not the schools, it's the IPS's lowering and failing standards is the reason we're losing so many kids to charter schools, going to township schools, because we're lowering our standards here. If we lost 20,000 kids from IPS to a charter school or county school, then that means we should rewrite our statement that we need, that we're going to get to these kids. You see what I'm saying? I have a problem. My daughter comes and tells me at Broad Ripple, the principal leaves, vice principal leaves, dean leaves. She's got 3 teachers that's left. These guys are jumping ship like a boat on fire in the middle Pacific Ocean. You see what I'm saying? So now I got secondhand type teachers teaching my children. You see? So it's not, you give me 3 minutes, but man, my children need 4 years. You see what I'm saying? And to me, it's a travesty and it's a disjustice, not only to the city, but to our demographics. You guys are talking about closing historically strong schools, not just in the state, in the city, in the whole country. Broad Ripple, Shortridge, you know, some of these schools, man, they have such a long tradition that it's ridiculous. So my thing of it is, these neighborhood schools are vital because due to our demographics, if anybody watches the news, we got 16, 17, 18-year-old kids killing each other. But an educated kid is not going to pick up a gun and go shoot this dude been in class with him for 4 years. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not only losing my schools, but I'm losing my kids to the streets, to whatever, because they're not having a viable option. You're cutting our options in half. You see what I'm saying? And to me, it's sad. It's just fat sad. Thank you for your time.
Madam President, that concludes all the online sign-ups and sign-ups at the back of the room. Would you like me to reread the folks who were read earlier and not present? First is Jonathan Young, if present, please. Patricia Starks.
How you doing? I'm Patricia Starks. My son has been here since the 7th grade, and he's an A and B on the roll the whole year. How many years he's been here? He's also on ROTC, doing excellent. You know, we moved here from Gary, Indiana. So, you know, since he's been here, he's been improving a whole lot. The teachers know him. The teachers know myself and my husband. To take this away from him would be devastating. You know, he's a junior. He don't want to send her. He doesn't want to go to another school for his, you know, his senior year. This is important to him. It's important to me, you know, because my son, all the kids are important to this school. You know, we're doing everything that we have to do to make sure that our children achieve. And we're doing that. But if y'all take that away from us, where are they going to go? We'll probably lose most of them dropping out of school, going killing and rubbing, and you know, it's not necessary if you just keep the children where they can improve and excel.
Dawn Perez. Dawn Perez. After Dawn would be Yazli Velasquez, if present.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Perez. I'm a parent of a Northwest student, and I'm also a parent of a tech student. My daughter started Northwest in hopes of graduating. Now, if you close this school, the high school of graduating is dim. I urge you not to close this school or any other IPS school. What are your plans for redistricting? Do we have to figure it out ourselves, or they're just going to lose where they go to school? Transportation is already a problem for tech. My son's bus is late every single day for the beginning of the year, and if you combine these schools, there's going to be more problems. And the money you say you are saving, I'm sorry, go back to the safety of our children are at stake. The schools are already packed with students, 25 students per class. And then they're in school for the class for 90 minutes. Most adults, the attention span is 45 minutes. And you take that into consideration, you put more students in the class, you're going to lose more students. And the safety is beyond belief. And the money you say you're saving, you're going to have to spend it on buses or more security to keep our kids safe. And like I said, if you have more driving distance, you're going to spend more money trying to, you know, do maintenance on these buses, schools, and more people you're going to have to pay just to do that. And the reason you are moving so fast is I believe that you've already got it sold. You've got Broad Ripple sold, and you've got Arlington sold. That's why I believe you are moving so fast. Thank you for your time.
One final call for Ms. Velasquez, followed by Jim Sherrek. After Jim Sherrek would be Christina Smith, if present.
Do you hear the voices in the room? Do you hear the disagreement with what you're doing? Do you hear the anger and the frustration? Are you just going to ignore this? I'm Dr. Jim Sherrek, professor of IUPUI School of Education. I've spent over 20 years studying urban school districts. In making the decision to close Northwest High School, the school board is not considering the impact of this decision on individual boys and girls, their families, and their communities. They are not thinking of how they might be hurting our children, especially our children of color. Some of our children will drop out. Some will not recover from losing support systems that have been built for them at Northwest. Some will never recover from losing those teachers who really knew them and really cared about them. Some will leave IPS. Is this damage to students and family worth $9 million in a $250 million budget? If they'd really wanted to do what was best for the students, they could have found other savings in this larger budget. But they did not even try to consider any other options whatsoever. And at the same time, they were strongly supporting the opening of new charter high schools. What is their game plan here? Closing Northwest and thus hurting students and families, especially low-income families, while supporting more charter high schools. Clearly, this school board is not dedicated to our children, families, and communities. For the white school board members, is this a kind of white racism to put dollars over children of color? Who are they really working for? We have some strong evidence of who you're working for. Over the last 3 school board elections, the Mind Trust and Stanford Children have spent over $1.5 million putting you in the front of this room. All of a sudden, starting in 2012, wealthy, conservative white people from Indiana and across the country contributed over $1.5 million to buy the election of this school board. I'm glad we're entertaining you. Thus, when the school board ignores the clear fact that the community demonstrated in multiple meetings does not want to close the high schools, we know who the school board is obeying. Are you listening to the community, or are you following those who bought your seats?
Brandon Washington, if present. Nathan Harris. Mr. Harris would be followed by Victor Dumbili, if present.
Chair, Board, thanks for allowing us this opportunity. We come before you today, my wife Carrie and I, who already stood before you, having attended most of the, I believe all of the town hall meetings and many of the board meetings. We didn't stop attending because our schools were, quote, saved, but we continued because when we grew up in the community, we were poor kids who struggled like many of the students today. And so we care for the students of today, and we love the students of today, just like our parents and the community loved us. I remember attending School 37, School 45, School 29, School 56 before I went to high school, and even the kindergarten for School 37. And I remember, just to draw a picture for you, of somehow I held on to a toy that a little girl tried to snatch when I was in kindergarten. And she bit me, and I started crying, and how the teacher consoled me, if I remember right, this many years ago. I remember being a Cub Scout, and I didn't have a uniform, and how I was consoled by a leader in a public school. I remember we would walk across the street, and during the school days, there was Bible study just across the street from IPS school. I remember many times I had no money to pay my book rental, but somehow the administration and the teachers allowed us to use books and to continue to come. So I draw a picture of strong teachers who had control of their classrooms, and leaders who were strong in the community, and administrators who were confident and they loved the students that they served. I remember Mrs. Allen, who was a very strong counselor at Northwest High School when I worked with her, when I worked with the Upward Bound program, and how she was deeply concerned about the students that attended Northwest, very deeply. And so I draw a picture of these strong individuals who I believe that we can somehow get back to, as I believe that it takes work, and it takes heart and commitment and love. I believe that it is an easy decision for you, and I suggest, board members, that you make the decision individually and with a sincere heart and a love, as you should be driven for all the students that you serve. Yet it is a tough decision, and it's a decision which I think that you should take the time to consider all of the information that you've received from the community as you make the decision, but that you need to delay it
sir.
So that you can make the right decision.
Thank you, sir. The comment
Thank
period
you.
has
Thank you.
concluded.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Charity Scott. Talia Parham. Andrea De Ramos. Michelle Strader. Adrian Washington. Isaac Smith. Vera Hayes. Adam Sears. Madam President, that concludes the second reading of the names.
Thank you, Mr. Grommelsbacher. Thank you to all of our speakers. We know this is a very difficult, emotional decision. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate your presence. And what you say does inform our decision-making as we move forward. We will now adjourn briefly and move to the Media Center, where we will complete our monthly action meeting. And I hope that you will join us there. Thank you. Good evening. I hereby call to order the action session of the Board of School Commissioners for Thursday, August 31st. I would like to thank everyone who attended the meeting in the auditorium and welcome anyone who has joined us in the Media Center. Would you please stand and join in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mulholland, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Arnold.
Here.
Please excuse this interruption. Coaches and sponsors, please note that our ECA buses for this evening will be leaving at 7:30. Please note that our ECA buses for this evening will be leaving at 7:30. Please monitor your students until that time. Thank you very much and have an awesome evening.
Commissioner Bentley?
Here.
Secretary Gore?
Here.
Commissioner Hoops?
Here.
Commissioner Moore? Vice President O'Connor? President Sullivan?
Here. Thank you. We will now adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. The agenda was reviewed Tuesday and reflects any necessary modifications and additions. Reviewing the modified agenda, are there any requests for changes to the agenda as presented? Any suggestions? Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is adopted. We do not have any recognitions this evening, so we will proceed to section 3. We are now in the opening comments. Does any commissioner wish to offer comments at this time? Commissioner Bentley.
I just have a quick comment. I received an email today about a longtime IPS, I think she was, media assistant who passed away. And so I just went in to acknowledge that at the meeting. Apparently she was very well loved and respected, that her name was Elaine Oglesby, and she'd been in the district for over 30 years as a media assistant. And I believe, do you know whether she was in several schools? Do you guys know which schools? Yeah, it didn't list it in her obituary, but so I just wanted to send out thoughts and prayers to her family.
Thank you. Having received public comments at the community forum, we will move directly to section 4, which is the consent agenda. The items included on the consent agenda were reviewed at our agenda review session on Tuesday and reflect all necessary modifications. Are there any questions about any items included on the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Any comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. I will now turn the agenda over to Dr. Farabee.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, Madam President. In Section 6, we have superintendent reports. We have one item for superintendent reports, which is item 6.01, which is our quarterly finance update. Chief Financial Manager Weston Young will provide the fourth quarter update for the 2016-17 school year, which includes the status on all district funds, financial management projects and priorities and initiatives in progress. It's important to note that we provide quarterly finance updates to ensure that we elevate transparency as relates to district funds. So with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Weston at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Farabee. Good evening, Commissioners. We will review the 2016-17 school year Q4 finance picture. We're going to review the board appropriated funds. We'll review our status of year-to-date spending with supplier diversity. We'll review some budget updates for the budget years 16-17 and 17-18. We'll talk about some long-term planning that we're continuing to do, and then also highlight one of our principals at Jonathan Jennings, Kevin McMahon, with student-based allocation. I want to focus on the boxes below because they're there every meeting, but they're very important. First one's maintain financial and operations transparency. The budget has been aligned with the appropriations, the authorization to spend in the last number of years, last 2 or 3 years, and that is transparent, and the focus is aligning that budget so we talk about if the dollars go over the amount spent. The SBOA audit, the State Board of Accounts, has finished their audit for school year 14-15, 15-16. That is available on our website. You can go to the finance page and find that report. Please note that is among the Indiana districts. We are the most current district in the state. Some districts have not even been audited since 2013. Form 9 has been completed. That is our annual financial report to the DOE, and that has been finalized and will be posted to the IDOE very soon. It is also on our website when it gets posted. The SBA allocations, our student-based allocations, those are posted to our finance website. We have detailed lists by school of the dollars that were allocated to our principals to use for school design planning in the early part of the year. We have a finance committee that reviews policies and procedures, and we're excited about what we've done the last 2 years with them. When we talk about timely updates, we have these quarterly finance updates. We talk about it. 3 years ago, we weren't, the board wasn't even receiving year-to-date budget to actual updates. But I do want to highlight on the providing timely financial updates is with the SBOA audit completed, the rating agencies do a review after those timeframes. I just want to highlight that that's a very important piece of the puzzle for IPS is to maintain a high, stable credit rating. And so here to report that on the surveillance review, because of untimely provided financial information due to the State Board of Accounts protocols, a rating decision was made, and the information related to 16-17 and future years was utilized. Because of the information presented, the deficits shown and forecasted, further inquiry was made, and for weeks, our team told the story of IPS. So IPS has and what it highlighted was that IPS has a need to address these operating deficits, that the leadership is managing and has shown evidence to manage towards the cash management policy's minimum cash balance as a guiding factor, set apart in the cash management policy approved by the board, that Indianapolis as a whole is a very strong economic base, and that there is strength in the leadership's plan to address program and funding concerns, primarily highlighting the right size of real estate utilization, facility utilization, and the willingness to pursue all revenue options available to an Indiana school district. And without this evidence of intentional and deliberative decision-making, the rating decision would have been negatively impacted. IPS remains strong when compared to Indiana districts, and the outlook is stable from our credit rating agency if we continue to execute and fund operational and academic transformation informed by the 2015 strategic plan. We'll continue to highlight some of the initiatives funded during the 16-17 school year. On the right-hand side is the 16-17 actuals. In the middle is the budgeted amounts. The key part here is the drop in revenue on mainly the general fund and the debt service fund. In the general fund, there was a delay in the receipt of Skip's property sales, which we've talked about quite a bit. But we will actually be receiving that here in early September. We have included it in our 17-18 budget, and so the drop in general fund revenue is primarily due to that delay that was assumed to be received in 16-17. As far as the debt revenue, we've talked about this a couple of times where the DLGF in our transition from calendar year to fiscal year has reduced the tax rate for 1 year and is giving us less than expected. And so, note, we are continuing to pay our debt, but we are utilizing the cash balance that we have on the books, not from the revenues that we received this year. The next is the supplier diversity highlight. We have year-to-date, January through June, the calendar year, where last year we were in the midst of an IT refresh, and we had an opportunity to purchase $3.8 million of technology from a diverse minority vendor. In that case, it jumped to 24%. We've been averaging about 10 to 11%. We're currently in that 11% range, and without that 3.8%, we're down a little bit from last year. We highlight a couple things here, that our forms for our vendor registration have been revised, and we're capturing new data, and it's informing our outreach to those vendors. I just remind you, this is certified vendors that go through a process and pay fees to have their certification in their process. As far as the 16-17 budget highlights, we've reviewed the additional appropriations before the board in May. They were approved by the board. In June, the DLGF approved those as well. Our spending remained below those appropriation amounts. For 16-17, you're well aware of the strategic initiatives that we continue to fund, the teacher supports, the IT infrastructure, and then system and process improvement impacts. So for the last 2 years, our team, finance, facilities, the SPED teams, the academic programs, what we've been doing is tweaking around the edges certain processes in order to receive additional funds just by doing a process that was available and not done before. And so the Finance Committee back a year and a half ago, we moved our large cash balance to a more strategically deployed advisory firm, and we increased our revenue by $1 million. By that simple move, we supported and it lessened the amount of the general fund impact, funding almost 12 to 13 teachers. The textbook collections increased from year over year, about $150,000. Again, impacting the amount of teachers we can support in the general fund and not getting hit with the general fund. Medicaid reimbursement has increased almost $300,000. Again, health services model that you previously approved, we're funding our medical services out of the medical reimbursement funds, not out of the general fund. The grant contributions, just going out and seeking out donors, we're making progress. We've increased our grant contributions by $1 million. 4 of many opportunities where we've pursued revenues by just tweaking around the edges. And I want to highlight the operations teams, the academic teams that made that possible. We will continue to strive to do even more. The last one I want to just highlight that $4.6 million was sitting in a cash bank account with another entity related to IPS that we have access to, and it was never pursued. And our team, for about 3 months during the year, worked with facilities procurement and finance to reimburse capital projects funds that had previously paid for those projects. And so that's just a one-time windfall that with diligence and effort, we brought dollars to the district and put it to use. For 17-18, we're continuing to highlight our student-based allocation. It's the first year of implementation on that. We projected enrollment back in the late part of 2016. We are now seeing students in the schools. We're adjusting our teacher and our dollars associated to those new enrollments. We're currently calling that fall adjustments, and that is happening in the next 2 weeks. As far as continued investment, we continue to execute our grade configuration plan that you've approved. We have our system upgrades and process improvements, which relate to software and technology in a lot of cases. And then we've launched our 3-tier transportation model, which should bring some savings from utilizing a bus more often. As far as state per pupil amount, when we set the budget, we had a budget amount of $6,971. That was actually our per pupil amount from last year. The legislative session was in process at the time when we approved that. The IDOE per pupil amount that we are receiving is $6,934. And in your deck, there's a lot of appendices, a lot of reference materials for your review. One of the highlighted appendix items that we continue to show that tells part of the story on the revenue side is the drop in per pupil funding from 2010 is down 6%, while inflation and all the other expenses that we have in our district to retain teachers continue to, our desire is to raise them. And so that is the main storyline for 17-18 that continues, that we're going to continue to fund our teacher compensation and for quality teachers in the classroom, all the while receiving less revenue. When it comes to long-term budget planning, there's a lot of monitoring of federal, state, and local policy. At the federal level, a lot of discussion about the education budget. A lot of concerns. SPED, title funding is something that we're watching. If whatever the federal determines, the state is probably going to be determining to pick that up. And if they don't, local would have to make that decision to get the to meet the needs of the kids and get the resources to the kids. As far as the state level, we projected, and the legislation had $2-some million in ELL funding. And just this last couple of weeks, we learned that some of that money was not appropriated. You know, it just was. The state is not funding that. And so it's a couple $1 million that is not coming to our district and other districts, but the general fund will be picking that up. That's something that we're monitoring and seeking advocacy for. And on the local funding side, the debt and other property tax caps continue to have an impact on our revenues. the big pieces are recruitment of quality staff. And then once we hire them, to retain them. And a lot of that comes down to the wages and being competitive in the market for wages. Adequate resources, technology, textbooks. First time doing textbooks in 6 years. This first time in 16, 17. IT refresh, we highlighted, first time refreshing our computers in 5 to 6 years. We need adequate resources for our kids, and it takes dollars. And we're choosing to do that because it's the right thing to do. We're also concerned investing in our safety and security, and we need to do that even more so in the coming days ahead. So we continue to manage our cash flow per our policies, and we appreciate the generous community that's around us, that comes around it with charitable funding, which we've increased, but we need even more. Community partnership development, the relationships we have to service the highest need kids in our city through partnerships with our hospitals, with our social service agencies. Some of the time they're picking up some of the tab we're participating in. Those are strong partnerships and must be continued just to meet the kids, but we need more partnership, and we appreciate the partners that are involved. We continue to then move to strategic planning and strategic spending, which I'd like to invite Kevin McMahon available to speak to us tonight on how, as a principal, when provided dollars instead of staffing positions, the process was different, but also, I believe, more strategic to meet student outcomes in this coming year.
Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. Excited to hear from you. Before we get started, just will clarify a couple acronyms that were referenced earlier. The IDOE or DOE is the Indiana Department of Education or Department of Education, and then ELL would be our English language learners, and SPED will represent our special education. And Commissioner Gore, I think you had a question about the minority data that was presented. And
right.
If you would like, we can entertain that question at this time, or we can hear from Kevin. Do you have a preference?
Okay, about the diversity.
Yes.
And the MBE. I did. I wanted to know if we had a specific department for the diversity, hiring vendors.
So we have a specific position.
And if we do, I tried to find it and I didn't find. When I went online, I didn't see.
There's a specific position.
It is a position.
Yes.
Is it under another department that I
procurement?
See, okay. How is it handled, and how do we solicit our suppliers? I need it. I think I asked you for some, maybe a list of when you did suppliers.
We can provide the list. As far as the vendor registration packet.
Yeah, because I keep seeing non-MBWAV suppliers on our purchasing when we do general purchasing. So I was just wondering.
Well, when we have a contract, that's when it comes to general purchasing. Some contracts have opportunities, some do not. Some large suppliers are publicly held. Some of our consulting is through universities or through social service agencies, which aren't available to those. So everything that comes through on the general purchasing report, may or may not even have an option to meet the needs of a large school district like us. When there are opportunities that arise, they come typically around capital projects, when we have renovations, when we have building needs that arise. And that's, I'd highlight Scott Martin and his team. They're very cognizant and strategic, and when there's an opportunity, we have lists and we've brought in those vendors to do some of that work. And that's what's reflected in the report, on the slide in the presentation.
Okay. I guess I also wanted to know, do we use local suppliers if we can? Do we stay with them?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And we can provide more information on how vendors have access to IPS as relates to providing us various services, and then also just highlight as to Weston's point around certain services that are provided to IPS by vendors aren't eligible for those categories that are referenced on the slide. So we can provide more information on what our process is and what the flow, so they have a clearer understanding of how that's handled for the district.
Okay, because maybe I don't understand at this point.
Yeah, we're happy to clarify. Yeah. So thank you, Kevin. Again, we appreciate you being with us this evening and your leadership at Jonathan Jennings.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Throughout the SBA changes, we actually lost some staff members, but we saw that as an opportunity to take a deeper look at how we're using our staff and our resources. Through the process, we administered a staff survey, and that yielded the results that we were having low levels of, one, positive communication, and two was the clear agreement and understanding of what high-level instruction looked like. After doing a root cause analysis, we saw that was in part due to inefficient professional learning communities. We took a deeper understanding and look at what we were doing and saw that there was a disconnect, in part because we had homeroom teachers meeting separately from our support staff, such as ESL teachers, Title I teachers, special ed teachers. That made the gap of that common understanding even greater. So we looked at our scheduling and we looked at our resources and were able to create a schedule that allowed for not only increased common planning time, but a 90-plus minute PLC. During that PLC, ESL, SPED, and title support are also included for the first 45 minutes. So already we're seeing positive results from that increased planning time. Throughout the process also, we were able to see that our special area staff were being underutilized. They provide coverage for the PLCs, mainly at the beginning of the day, at recess, and at the end of the day. But also our art teacher works as a co-teacher along with our social worker and sees each classroom every other week to deliver character ed lessons. We saw that we have great kids, but sometimes in regard to character education, our message wasn't as clear because of the frequency of which it was delivered. Now we have a consistent message to go over our school values each and every week. So that's been a tremendous effort for our staff and our students. Special area, again, we are using them to their fullest potential. We have a PE teacher who just received her license in special education. She is part of our MTSS committee, and she is providing interventions throughout the school week too. So,
what's that mean? What's that mean? MTS?
I'm sorry, multi-tiered systems of support. Formerly RTI, formerly a lot of other things. But yeah, so providing support and interventions for our Tier 3 students. Okay. And then our music teacher is also licensed in math. Due to losing staff, we had to create a split classroom between 4th and 5th grade. Being licensed in math and switching over to the Engage New York curriculum, it made it very challenging to effectively teach 2 different grade levels at the same time. So we were able to work it into her schedule where she also teaches a 90-minute math block each and every day. Throughout the process, Central Services, they have been instrumental throughout the planning process. They gave us support at the same time giving us flexibility. They helped us realize the importance with limited dollar amounts that we had to find additional outside resources. We created a cause council, and the cause council is community assets used for student excellence. And throughout this council, we meet every other month, and it just continues to grow and flourish. So we have local churches, we have Boys and Girls Club, we have Boy Scouts, we have IU Health, RHI, and the list just continues. And the support they have given us has been amazing. They are offering tutoring. They are offering tutoring during the school day of an evening, clothing for our students. We're getting $500 through Reading First for books for our classrooms. We're getting a new playground. We're getting a track. So I'm clearly understanding now what the community can do for our school. So it's been so refreshing for myself, our students, and the staff. So I'm very, very pleased with the direction that we're heading. Any questions?
Commissioner Arnold?
And I don't know if this is part of the school-based or if it's school-specific. I was at a meeting and they announced that the pies, the parent,
Involvement educators.
were being cut to half-time. Is that done by individual school? Is that even true?
I cannot answer if it is being done in other schools, but it is not being done in our school. Our PI has been instrumental throughout the process as well.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any scenario where that position was reduced, but if we can discuss that further and find out specifics on the school, we can help clarify that situation.
And they didn't say, I think the message I got was it was system-wide, that they were putting those down to half-time to hire social workers or somebody else to do something else. It didn't make sense to me, but I thought I would at least.
A district-wide effort to do that would be inaccurate.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And as Kevin referenced, professional learning community, or he said PLCs, that represents professional learning community, which is time that teachers and administrators use in the building to collaborate. And again, I think this is a great example of how schools are thinking differently about allocating their resources to better serve their students and their families.
I have a sort
Commissioner
of
Bentley.
Thank you. I have a just sort of general question. You had a lot of really good information on the intro to your presentation, and it would be wonderful if maybe you could connect with communications and we could get sort of some talking points, because I think there was some really good information about what we are doing as far as increasing revenues and, you know, and sort of a breakdown of, you know, where does our revenue come from, and we have limits on how we can spend out of certain funds and so on and so forth. And I think I mean, I understand some of that, but you had some really good information that you mentioned earlier about some of the, you know, what staff has been doing, you know, on trying to raise money, you know, outside of the normal avenues that we receive money. And I think that's really important for us to talk about, because I think there's a perception that we're not doing some of that kind of work, and particularly, you know, what kinds of things we've been trying to do at the State House. I know we've worked very hard, and we still had a drop in per pupil funding, which is really frustrating. And we can, you know, that's a whole other conversation. But I just think it's important that if you could put that in some kind of bullet pointed and give it to us. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Hoops.
It seems like there's lots of learning and benefits from going through this SBA process. We've heard 2 or 3 principals. Is there a sort of a sharing opportunity so that instead of reinventing the well or having the opportunity to look at their school given the experience of another school that might be helpful? Is there opportunity for that?
I'll highlight a couple things. There is opportunity. The learning communities are broken down into clusters, and so you have like a Montessori program that is working together, and they're learning from each other. You have the CFI community that's working together. You have an East Side and West Side clusters. So sometimes they're sharing, you know, a half FTE here, because that's the need that the students have, and that person can be used elsewhere in another school. But I think through the student-based allocation process and planning for the upcoming year, I think we'll see, after this fall adjustment period, some anecdotes and cases of what people did. Because right now it's, the kids are coming in, there's shifts that are happening because those projections and actuals are changing. So I think one of the goals of our team through the innovation autonomy supports that we provide is to, you know, get the stories of a Kevin McMahon at 109 and capture every one of the pieces. Like, what was the change and shift that you did? If you received more money, what did you do with that additional money? If you were reducing, how did you make ends meet? Great example here. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight Kevin, because he's so thoughtful about on the downside, because everybody wants to gain, but if you lose, like, those are tough decisions. And so the camaraderie that principals have kind of gels around some of the, hey, everybody's losing here on this end or is gaining. And so I think there's a process for us to do that the next round, even more so than what's been happening this year.
I also think it is provided principals an opportunity to think about how they share resources among schools. And I know some schools have done that or thought through how we might share positions or resources or professional development to ensure that their dollars go further.
Commissioner Bentley?
And I know I brought this up before but are we trying to figure out how we can track academic decisions and spending per pupil in those areas at each school so that eventually schools can sort of compare, like, you know, here's a Jonathan Jennings that's, you know, gone from a C to an A. What did they do in that building and how did they spend their resources to make that happen? Are we working towards that?
So
very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Measuring return on investment is definitely a priority as we continue implementation of student-based allocation. I see it as one of the core functions of the central service team to lift up best practices and then strategies that are serving our students and families well.
Mr. Young, I just want to commend you for the hard work that you've done and your staff. You have an amazing staff, and I think what is just so wonderful to see is how committed everyone is, and knowing that what our financial situation is and how hard everybody works to find just that last dollar, first dollar, and to really put it to its highest and best use. I got to sit in on the exit interview with the State Board of Accounts, and I think the term they used was nearly perfect. And I'm pretty sure that term has not been applied to too many IPS State Board of Account audits. So kudos to you and your team. It is greatly appreciated by this board.
Thank you. Pass it along.
Thank you, Wes, and thank you. Again, echo the comments on the work of the team. The next section of our agenda for discussion and consideration is new business. These are all action items that we request that commissioners consider for action tonight. The first is item 8.01, which is the 2018 board meeting calendar.
Do I have a motion to approve the 2018 board meeting calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Bentley.
And we have confirmed that we're not in conflict with any major holidays for any major religions on this calendar. And remembering some start at sunset the day before. Just wanted to check that.
I did. So I scrubbed it for conflicts with holidays, district events, breaks, but I'll.
Okay. I thought you probably had, but I just wanted to go on record as asking the question.
Did you check it for Pacer and Colts game? Just asking.
Sorry, Commissioner Arnold.
That was included in the religious statement.
Yeah, for some people,
For
yes.
some people.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
The next item considered for action is item 8.02, which is a revision to human resource policy and guidelines. It's important to note that we're recommending action in September at the action session for these revisions in alignment with board policy as it relates to revisions to policies or guidelines. As previously discussed, the administration was requested to conduct a review of board policy to ensure alignment with the board's core commitments and beliefs. There's been significant work done in the area of human resources, and before you is a batch of revisions for policy and guidelines. We have with us tonight our Human Resource Officer, Minnie Schlegel, who can provide a framing and a briefing on the recommendations in your document. And we understand that this is a lengthy document in your materials, about 70 pages of revisions, but we believe that these are important modifications that need to occur. So with that, we'll turn the presentation over to Ms. Schlegel, and then we're happy to entertain any questions or comments you have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fairby. Commissioners, I'm pleased to join you tonight and give you a little update on the lengthy work that we've been doing, and this is really just the beginning. So what I'm going to do tonight is just give you a quick overview of how we're approaching the work, and go over the 4 policies that we have in front of you tonight, and then talk about next steps. So for the past few months, as Dr. Farabee mentioned, we're really trying to run through all of the policies that are in place that touch human resources. So they're the 3000s and 4000s. Review them and their administrative guidelines that go along with them. So we have a regular HR working group who meet on a bi-weekly basis to spend some time reviewing, looking. We've also involved speaking to and discussing with our bargaining units, both on the classified and the certified side. And then we have talked to our academic folks and our functional area leaders, so head of transportation, head of food service, to get their feedback as well. So part of the process that we, and our approach and our goals in this work, was sort of lumped into 3 main areas. So we really wanted to look at where we could possibly consolidate. So we have lots and lots of policies and administrative guidelines that have been passed over the years over many administrations and many different school boards. And we wanted to identify ones that were no longer relevant or contradictory to each other. So that was part of the consolidation. We also wanted to generalize. We wanted the policies to really reflect high-level policy statements, the administrative guidelines to really articulate how the district would accomplish those goals. We also wanted to remove any specific personal references. So there were some policies and guidelines that had specific names or job titles that change over the course of administrations. And then we just wanted to do a general refresh. So what are best practices now with other school districts and other HR teams across the country? So we're bringing to you tonight 4 main policy areas with both policies and administrative guidelines, and you'll see them across the top. So we started here because these were the policies and administrative guidelines that either had most feedback from supervisors and managers that was confusing, needed clarification, or really touched upon a lot of the automation work that we're doing across the district. So the rollout of our new payroll system, the rollout of CareWorks, which is our outsourced FMLA system. So our FMLA policy, we really wanted to address the fact that it's outdated, it was not very clear, and we looked at the leave calculation period and how it's aligned or not aligned with best practices. In terms of discipline, we realized that we needed a lot more clarity in what was currently in place. There was also conflicting information on what was considered job performance versus discipline. And there were some inconsistencies across several policies that we needed to address that had been passed over the years. In terms of the attendance policy, we actually didn't have one, so we had administrative guidelines but no policy, and they did not include any information on teachers. Excuse me. And then in comp time, we realized we had a policy statement and we didn't have a whole lot of guidance for supervisors, and we were rolling out Chronos. We really needed to address that. So those are the 4 that I'm going to talk about tonight. With our FMLA, we had last revised it in 2008, but it was based on a 1994 policy, and the law has actually been updated and changed. So that was really the big thing that we addressed here. We also changed the way we calculated FMLA leaves to a rolling 12-month calculation instead of fiscal year, and that really helps prevent the stacking of leaves, which helps the district. And then we also just wanted to really articulate the rights of employees in a more clear fashion. Our discipline policy, we really aim to differentiate between conduct and job performance. So that was very unclear for supervisors. And we wanted a more consistent approach for both classified and certified folks. It also focuses on more coaching and alternative measures of developing people. And it eliminated, we had several conflicting policies that existed, so we streamlined them. Again, as I mentioned, we didn't have an attendance policy, so we've created one. It unifies tardiness and absenteeism, so with the timekeeping with Kronos, it really makes it more fluid for supervisors and I think for employees. And it includes clear expectations of teachers, so it takes it out of discipline and really puts it with attendance and timekeeping. And compensatory time off, I think I mentioned we do have a general policy statement, but we didn't have enough guidelines for supervisors to really implement that calm time idea with the rollout of Kronos. So it helps, gives supervisors much more specific guidance. It creates an annual cap on accruable compensatory time. It prioritizes utilizing it over overtime, and it creates a payout. So we just put a lot more specific guidelines in place for supervisors. So after our review, research of best practices and revisions, we engaged those stakeholders. We wanted to finalize those, communicate it out, and then train supervisors across the district once these are finalized. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Hoops.
I wasn't clear if what we were doing when you were explaining it, Dr. Farabee. In September, we're going to vote on this, and we're just getting a review now of these specific ones?
Yeah, so part of board policy for any revisions of policy is essentially 30-day waiting period. And so we present the policy and then we follow that accordingly. And typically the board only votes on those policies unless they waive that provision the following month. And so we would request that commissioners consider these revisions for September, and there's no request to waive that policy at this time.
Understand. So Commissioner Bentley.
So the other document in there has all the details of the specific changes in each policy and what's being consolidated and
that's right. We actually tried to give you a visual because there's so many pages. So, and some of them are, being consolidated from different places, from the 4,000s and the 3,000s. It was a little bit of a puzzle piece.
Well, I just have a comment on this. I just really appreciate this work. I mean, this has been sort of a challenge, I think, and it's a challenge, I think, with any large organization. Mm-hmm. But I know that, I remember 10 years ago when the board went through every policy in the policy manual, and then, and up to that point, there were no administrative guidelines to go with those policies. And so that whole process started, and, and it's an ongoing process, but I think it's particularly important in HR. So I really appreciate, all the work that's gone into this, because this is a huge lift to get this done.
Thank you. There's more coming, so.
Commissioner Hoops. Yeah, I'm sure.
Just ask similar to what she was concerned about, that oftentimes other priorities take over, and then, here we are 4 or 5 years later, and they haven't been looked at again. Is there a process that's being developed for, a reasonable review of these so that we don't have this massive cleanup? Because obviously, they're important because they help the organization and management and employees all understand what the policies are and how to execute them effectively. So what is the plan for ensuring that they're living, breathing documents?
Right. So I think it'll take us quite a few more months to get through the rest. So our plan is to continue meeting and working on them until we're finished, and then to actually consolidate so that we have classified and certified living in the same document but paired out, so it's a little bit more cleaner. I'm often going to one section and going to the other section to find the other. My union friends are nodding their heads yes. So it's challenging to even just find them. So once we do that, then I anticipate us having sort of an annual audit, to be frank.
It'll be online and accessible and searchable.
Yeah, and they are now, but you're going to 2 different sections to find, and some of them have administrative guidelines, but the other one doesn't, so we're trying to make them all parallel.
Searchable is a interesting word.
Commissioner Gore.
I just want to say that I appreciate the clarity that you put into this and appreciate your work. I know it was really hard work, but it seems to have descriptions and things, because sometimes people come to you and go, and I'll go, it's in the policy, but that's all it was. There wasn't any explanation or description, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And thank you for your hard work.
Commissioner Arnold.
And I would just like to add my appreciation. And I know that, you know, state statutes or federal statutes also change, which have to make things more complicated.
Right.
Because every time something changes. So I know it's a moving target, but it looks like you've done a good job of
made a little better.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Bentley.
I just have one other question. Are we having legal counsel review some of these? Because I know a lot of times we want to keep the policies at that more general, high level. A lot of times statute requires that we have like these, more like an administrative guideline that's actually in policy. So we're sort of looking at that to make sure that we're following any legal requirements that we have on specific policies that we have to have.
That's right. That's right. That's the benefit of having an employee relations director that's a lawyer.
Commissioner Arnold.
And just one more thing. I would assume that having very well-defined personnel policies and procedures helps with potential liability situations. And I know with human resources, that's probably your greatest opportunity to get people who feel like they were treated unfairly or, you know, the policies weren't fair or whatever. So again, I think that's a potential benefit to the district in that potentially fewer grievances or lawsuits against us for not having good solid policies and procedures.
In addition to those procedures and guidelines, I know that Mindy and among other team members are also working on their standing operating procedures as well. So that's also in development, which is a complement to, you know, board policy and administrative procedures.
Thank you very much.
So these proposed policy revisions will be on the table until September, when they will be presented for action.
The next agenda item for action is item 8.03. It's a resolution affirming the board's commitment to replicating and expanding high-demand choice programs with demonstrated academic success. We ask that commissioners consider resolution number 7750 as presented for approval.
Do I have a motion to approve resolution 7750 as presented?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Gore?
Oh, I think we went back and changed some of the wording that we had found a little different. So I did read it, so I'm going with that.
Good. Commissioner Bentley?
I know that, because I know that there was a lot of pushback from families at Butler Lab about the expansion. And there was a meeting last night. Is there anybody that can talk about how that meeting went with the families at School 60 or?
Yeah, Dr. Pratt can speak to the meeting last night as he comes forward to the microphone. I would just add that one of the points I know that was reiterated with families is that the logistics or the specifics on how we would expand or even potentially the site is still under consideration. And just clarifying with families that those decisions have not been made at this point, and that information that they received previously from the principal is not in final form at all.
Good evening. That is correct. Last night we had a meeting about 40 to 50 parents at William A. Bell. We opened up with taking questions or ideas or suggestions from the parent. They provided us feedback. We took those items down to make sure that when we come back with a proposal, we try to address those issues. Parents seem excited about the board support from the other night and listening to their concerns and willing to work with the school system to develop an appropriate plan for both sites at Butler Lab.
Well, is there is there a plan to like create a school-based planning committee that might include, because I know parents were you know, wanting to somehow be involved in the planning. Is there a plan to have a planning committee? Because there wasn't a planning committee before.
Correct.
And I think that caused some problems.
Yes, so they talked to Principal Smith last night about involving the school leadership team. So Mr. Smith is going to work through the school leadership team, and they will communicate with the parents about the decision about the expansion.
And there's parents on the school leadership
Yes,
team?
ma'am.
Okay.
Commissioner Gore.
Just one question. I know you met with 60, and I'm sure they talked about 55. Was there that still strong support for K through 8 in the room at 55?
We have not met with 55.
Well, no, I thought maybe the parents that some of their children might go to 55, but still be interested.
Yes, they are still open to the idea.
Yeah.
I think the question was, I think if I heard you correctly, are parents still requesting that the expansion site be a K?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
We continue to hear that, yes.
I knew there was a strong concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess before we vote on this, just to note that the two changes that were made were involving taking out the specific references to a site for the expansion of the Butler Lab School, and also including a statement of our commitment to equity and diversity and in access to choice programs. So those are the two major changes from the previous resolution Tuesday. Yes, Commissioner Bentley.
And I know, you know, it's been sort of a catch-22 challenge because, you know, there's been a lot of pressure put on the administration to expand these programs, you know, probably since the day you walked in the door, because there's a lot of pressure on school board members that if we have these popular and successful programs, why aren't we expanding them? And so, you know, but they do require a lot of planning. And so I understand that. But I am so committed to doing this because I believe it's our one of our only ways of having racially and socioeconomically diverse schools in this district. And those so racially and socioeconomically diverse schools are healthier places for kids, regardless of their background. And, you know, we should, you know, I think double, triple our commitment to expanding these kinds of programs because that's our only chance. And I'm not willing to give up on that. I think there are people that maybe are willing to give up on having racially and socioeconomically diverse schools, but I'm not willing to give up on that. And so hopefully, you know, we can come up with a comprehensive plan that's going to, you know, look at these programs, look at the rest of the district, and, you know, and have a long-range plan for expanding them. Because I feel very passionately that we need to do it, and we're not doing it fast enough.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So we're now, I think that's all of our agenda, voting agenda here. So we have some comments, and I think we have, do we have something special for someone? We are sad tonight because we are losing a wonderful staff member, someone who has made a huge difference in a relatively short time of being with our district, and that is Dr. Wanda LeGrand. The only thing that makes us a little less sad is knowing that she is going on to a wonderful opportunity to impact lots of students in Washington, D.C. So we're excited for her for that challenge. I don't know if anyone else on the board would like to say a few words to Dr. LeGrand. It's hard talking to her when I can't see her, but
right
there she is. Deeply, deeply appreciate your commitment to our students, coming here from somewhere else, working hard for our kids, and becoming such an important part of our work. Really appreciate it and wish you all the best. And if there's any staff who would also like to make any comments, you don't feel compelled to do so, but you are more than welcome to use this opportunity to thank Dr. LeGrand. Yes, Commissioner Gore.
I'd just like to say to Dr. LeGrand, that it's been a short time since I've been on the board, but again, I'd like to thank you for your work and wish you well where you go, and we will miss you. So good luck. And when I come to Washington, I'll look you up.
Commissioner Bentley.
You know, the last few days I've gotten emails from people that, you know, work with you, and it's just been sort of this, you know, sort of one email after the other talking about what a wonderful person you are and how much respect people have for you as a leader and for your work. And, you know, we don't always see that. So it was nice to get those emails. I know it was hard coming in, you know, it was hard coming in here because you're from somewhere else. And it's hard to build trust and build those relationships with, you know, in a district the size of IPS, but it's clear from the emails that I got that you achieved that. And people really, you know, respect the work you have done and the relationships that you've built here. So, but, you know, like Commissioner Sullivan said, we're just so excited for you because, you know, you're going to I mean, we're big leagues, don't get me wrong, but Washington, D.C. is a pretty neat place that you're going, and we just wish you all the luck in the world, and thank you for all the work you've done here.
Anyone else? Commissioner Arnold?
Well, I would be remiss if I did not add, oh, she's crying. My best wishes to her and her little doggies too. And I'm glad for the fact she's moving to maybe a little better climate than here, and that she's also being able to move closer to her home base. So good for her, good for the opportunity, but sad for us, and we'll miss her and the good work she's done.
And I think we have a little parting, just one more memento, and also go ahead with Commissioner Hoops.
It has been very short opportunity to work with you, but enjoyed every minute. Just you're absolutely amazing, talented, and I look forward to learning more about what you're accomplishing at DC, and we're blessed to have had you this long. Thank you.
Okay. We have some goodies for you, so thank you very much.
Now, Dr. LeGrand, you know you got to come to the microphone.
We'd rather talk about the works. Let's discuss some student data. Thank you so much for your kind words. It's been a wonderful opportunity to be in Indianapolis. It's so funny that my husband finally joined me here. Most of you knew that when I got here 4 years ago, it was just me. So he finally joined, and he loves the city, and so now I'm taking him somewhere else. But this place has just been home. I remember the first year people thought, oh, how long are you going to be here? You're leaving, you guys are going to go back. And we just got settled, and my husband said, I don't think you're leaving, so I think I'm just going to come there. And so he came here in January. But thank you for your support. It's been a wonderful 4 years, and believing in the students of IPS, believing in our schools, providing the support that our principals need. But thank you for providing the support initially. It was a challenge to come in to say students first. And what we do is all about our kids every single day. But thank you for your support. I will miss all of you.
Thank you. Dr. Farabee.
Again, I also just echo the comments and just thank Dr. LeGrand for her service. And she is still on speed dial, and she's still a part of the IPS family, and we're really grateful for your many years of service. As we think about service, also just excited and really elated that we have one of our own that is one of 10 finalists for the Indiana Teacher of the Year. Our 2018 Teacher of the Year, Kathleen Roth, who we recognized earlier in the year, is now competing, and we wish her well in September, and we'll support her. But just exciting news for IPS, and I think, again, it's another great example of the excellence and the service that's taking place to meet the needs of our students and families. And I think the most appropriate way to close tonight is we've had the quarterly finance update. It's a part of the administrative responsibility. I think has been lifted up in a lot of our forums and discussions recently is to ensure that we are exercising strong financial stewardship. And I just think it's very appropriate that we continue to lift up that the district continues to look under every rock and take every step possible to ensure that we are managing our resources appropriately. And the examples tonight, I think, are just rich proof of the work that's being done, whether it's, $1 million of additional interest income, whether it's, $4.6 million of capital project funds to meet our capital needs. We're able to provide these types of updates at all of our quarterly finance presentations, and we're committed to doing that work to ensure that our students and families get what they need. So again, I'll just lift up the work of Wes and his team and all of our departments for continuing to tighten our belts to ensure that every dollar possible gets to the classroom. And I think what you heard tonight from Kevin is when we give schools the opportunity to have more dollars, they're being more smart and strategic about how those dollars are being used and distributed and resources for students. So again, just lift that up, and again, proud of Kathleen, and bittersweet for Dr. LeGrand, but we wish her very well.
Our next meeting will be our special called meeting on Monday, September 18th, beginning at 6 p.m. in the boardroom of the Education Center. Having completed all items on the agenda, the meeting stands adjourned.